Hi folks, thanks for tuning in to the Trail 90 Project Part 9. At the end of the last show, I was feeling really optimistic because I thought I had made great strides toward making my motorcycle ready to ride. But as you know, sometimes things aren't always what they seem. Remember that nice, custom fabricated exhaust system that I built in the last episode? Well, here's how it looks today. After running the engine for a little while, I noticed a small exhaust leak about right here. Well, it turns out this entire section was almost completely rusted out. So my first idea for a repair was to cut out the entire affected portion and replace it with a patch that I gleaned from the original Trail 90 muffler. But then I started thinking, that really wouldn't look very good, and furthermore, I found it extremely difficult to weld thin metal. And this is about as thin as a potato chip. You know, potato chips? Lucky for me, I have another Harley-Davidson muffler that I can start fresh with. And to replace the rusted out reducer that needs to mount right here, I'm using this. It started life as a 2 1/8 inch exhaust pipe connector that I cut a triangle out of, squeezed together, and welded shut. Welding this is a luxury compared to welding this. So now I just need to put it together. In consideration of my camera, I'm not going to record the welding, so I'll catch up with you post-fusion. Okay, the exhaust pipe is put back together with the new segment installed, and I'm really starting to appreciate the effectiveness of practice. As you can see, my welds are really starting to look better.
That pipe was broken.
It has been remade. Sorry about that. Let's paint. You know, I was thinking, we just did this in the last episode. Do you really care to see the play-by-play of spray painting an exhaust pipe?
Yes, please. And may we watch it dry, too?
You don't have to be that way. Alrighty, here is the finished custom exhaust pipe, version 2, and as far as progress goes, we're almost to the point that we were at the end of the last episode. But that's okay, in any project, mistakes will be made, embarrassing moments will be had, but I will not let these setbacks derail my endeavors to ride this motorcycle. So what's on the agenda today? To figure that out, I stepped inside and sat down. What? That's not good enough for you? I'm rather proud of myself. I didn't even fall. But I also made a list of all the things that still need to be done on the Trail 90, just to get some perspective of the entire project. And here's what I came up with. I need to fabricate a new air filter. This is all that remains of the original. The cage, air filter element, and rubber boot are all lost, and this plastic enclosure has a gaping hole and the remains of what looks to be a small animal nest, so it's pretty much unusable. I need to install the foot pegs and skid plate, which luckily I have on hand, so that shouldn't be a problem. I need to get a battery. The general consensus is that these machines shouldn't be operated without one, but luckily they're plentiful and reasonably priced. I also need to do something about the headlight. Unfortunately, this plastic enclosure is extremely broken and brittle. It needs to be replaced with a similar unit or something of my own design. But either way, I think it's a good idea to have a headlight because after all, it does get dark from time to time. This ignition switch needs to be repaired, and there's a short circuit either underneath this fender or possibly in the tail light. I also have a rusty drive chain that I'll try to bring back to life, a flat front tire, and the biggest issue that I still have to contend with is the brakes. What's wrong with them? In a nutshell, they don't work. The cables are frozen solid. Now I could leave it as is and just call this the Puff Daddy motorcycle. You know Puff Daddy. We won't stop. 'Cause we can't stop. But I think it's probably a better idea to attempt to get these working again. And that's what we're going to do now. I'll start things off by removing the brake levers. Next, I'll remove these cables and attempt to coax in a little oil. I wonder if Power Lube is a good hand moisturizer. To To increase my oiling efficiency, I'm making a funnel out of some cardboard and I'm going to tape it onto the outside of the cable with some electrical tape. Unfortunately, I don't think the electrical tape is oil resistant, so I'm not sure if it's going to work. We'll tape it all the way down the line here. There we go. Now it's time to fill her up. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'll just check back every few minutes and top it off as needed. I'll also keep an eye on the other end of the cable to look for any oil that's penetrated all the way through, which will be a good sign. Okay, about an hour has gone by and I've been slowly adding oil to this funnel. The cable is still stuck, however, so there haven't been any breakthroughs yet. I did make another funnel for this cable, and what I'll do now is top both of these off one last time and let them soak overnight. Sweet dreams, sweetheart. Good morning, good morning. It's time to find out if these beautiful lube toolies did their job at loosening up the cables. To find out, the first thing we need to do is gently prune back these lovely blossoms. Next, I'll put these cables back in the perches. Then grab a brake lever and hope for the best. Well, that's a shame. Let's try the other side. I don't think so. Let's try something else. Oh, so you want to be tough, do you? Play with the big boys? Okay, well, don't say I didn't warn you. You want to swim with the big fish? You might get burnt. I'm taking off these brake cables. Yeah. Okay, now that these are out in the open, we can go to work on them. What? No, I'm not wearing these frou-frou latex gloves because I'm a woman.
It's because I represent the Alliance.
But seriously, I was taking apart an old floor lamp this morning for scrap metal. See, I went to a yard sale looking for some used tires. I don't buy new tires, I buy used tires wherever I can and then mount them myself on the old-fashioned tire machine. They didn't have any tires at the sale, but they did have a pile of free items, and in that pile was the floor lamp. I got it home and the main trunk of the fixture was just this pretty much worthless steel pipe, but it was clad in valuable brass. So I started peeling off the 35 cents worth of brass and unfortunately sliced open my finger. But that's okay, it's the price you pay for greatness. So back to the brakes. I think I'll start by just bending the cables back and forth a little bit.
Stretch daily for increased flexibility.
Thanks. Heat shrink tubing. I think I can use you. How about this? So there is funnel version 2, which should work much better. This has been sitting long enough. I have a puddle of oil down here. Time to give it a try. So I'll just put this back in the perch to get some leverage on it and try it out. Ha-ha! Signs of life. Now I'll just lube it up a little more and work it back and forth, and this thing should be ready to go. And look at this. I think both of these cables will ride again. So I'll reassemble the front brake right now. That's front brakes. Moving on to the rear brakes, I'm not going to install the cable yet because it looks like this brake pedal has sustained some damage and is no longer ergonomically correct. So I'll remove that now and see if I can bend it back into shape. I think most of the bend that needs to be taken out is about right here. So I'll put it in the vise, heat it up with a torch, and apply force. Okay, let's see how this looks. Well, based on the pictures of brake pedals I've been looking at, it looks pretty good. I just got done working on the brake pedal a little bit more and it's straight enough, but then I looked a little bit closer at these foot pegs and saw that they are also out of alignment. You might be able to see it too if you look straight down the barrel here. This side needs to come forward just a little bit. This might take a while to heat up. Oh my goodness. They must have hit something substantial. More heat, more heat. Work hotter, not smarter. Something like that. Straightening these foot pegs is becoming quite a project. I suppose 30 years of falling down does take its toll. It took me almost the entire afternoon, but these foot pegs are now reasonably straight. So now I'll take them off again and use my flappy wheel to smooth out some of these unsightly battle scars. There, just like it never happened. So now I can install my tuned up foot pegs along with the skid plate. Do you hear that sound? That's the sound of the neighbors mowing their yard. I did that once. And there we are, skid plate and foot pegs in place. Now, what was I working on before? That's right, the back brakes. I can finally put all this stuff back together again. Now I'll put a little grease on the pivot shaft and put her back together. Looking good, looking good. And now I can install the rear brake cable. And there you have it, working brakes. So let's look at the to-do list. Foot pegs, done. Skid plate, done. Brakes, done. Next! How about the air filter? I've thought a lot about the air filter and it's a little bit of a challenge. If I were to buy all the correct pieces to bring this air filter back to its original configuration, it would probably cost around $100. I'm not spending $100 on the air filter. An inexpensive alternative is an aftermarket clamp-on filter, but there are a few problems with that idea. As you can see here, this carburetor is mounted at an angle. That angle, combined with the very limited space underneath this plastic cover, would make it extremely difficult to mount the filter directly to the carburetor. But I have an idea. The keystone of my home-built air filter assembly is going to be this. It's a piece of 1 1/4 inch diameter pipe that I bought at the hardware store. The reason I chose this size is because it's almost the same diameter as the carburetor's intake bell. The carburetor is 38 millimeters across, while this measures out at about 41. I want these to be as close to the same size as possible, so I'll bring this over to the grinding wheel and take off some material. Does this count as a lathe? I've never tried this before. Let's see how it goes. Okay, let's see how we made out. I had to modify this mounting chuck a little bit because as I was grinding, this pipe got so hot that it started melting the plastic right here. Well, it feels lighter. Let's check the measurements. And the caliper says 38.1 on the carburetor and 38.5 on the pipe. That's close enough for me. I want to put the pipe about right here, so I'll make a bracket out of this piece of metal that I found and use these two bolts as mounting points. To make the bracket, I'll start things off by drilling a hole right in the corner of this piece of metal. Next, I'll measure and drill for the second hole. Now that I have a couple holes drilled, I can mount the plate to the motorcycle and do a little creative drawing. What do you think? I think it looks swell. Jigsaw time. And here's the rough cutout. I'll use the grinder now to tidy it up. What do you think? I really don't like it much. I think I need to trim it up a little bit more. And here's how it looks after a little more cutting and trimming. I like it. I think it looks much more chiseled and practical. The next thing to do is make a bend in the bracket to match the curve of this pipe. Good enough for me. Time to break out the welder. There it is, welded together. Now I can go ahead and put it on the bike. And now that that pipe is installed, I can connect it to the carburetor with this little gem. It's a piece of 1 1/2 inch inside diameter flexible radiator tubing that I purchased at the local auto parts store. Perfect. I did a lot of soul searching trying to decide what type of air filter to install right here. On Amazon.com, I can buy a universal clamp-on filter that's made in China for less than $10. Or I can buy a similar filter that's proudly made in the United States for about $15. I mulled over that decision for days, but I did settle on one, and I'm happy with my choice. When you cast your ballot in an election, I don't think it makes any difference. But when you vote with your dollars, your voice is heard. And that's how we do things out here on the ranch. Well, the air filter is done and that list is getting smaller and smaller. I'll take a few moments right here to start soaking the drive chain in some oil. I'll coat it first with just some really light oil to penetrate all the nooks and crannies and clean it at the same time. So the drive chain is taking a much needed bath, and I think it's a great time to jump into the next project, which is the various bugs in this electrical system. How's the lighting in here? Yeah. I mentioned earlier when I was trying to get this machine running for the first time that I suspected a short circuit in this wire right here. My reasoning being that when this wire was connected, there was no spark at the spark plug when the engine was turned over. Observe. The wire is connected right now, so I'll zoom in, turn the lights off, and give it a kick. Darkness. Now, if I go ahead and disconnect the wire and try again. Nice big fat blue spark. So I was thinking there must be a short... Oh, wait a minute. Better turn the stage lights back on. Oh, I haven't graduated film, light, and sound, if you hadn't noticed. Echo! But that's okay, we're just having fun. My thinking was there must be a short circuit in this wire causing the electrical system to ground out and the spark plug not being able to fire. So I stuck my head up underneath this fender looking for a chafed wire or other evidence of a short circuit, and I couldn't find anything. So I did a little more research and found out that this wire, green with a yellow stripe, is actually the rear brake light circuit. And then I remembered earlier when I was working on the front brake cable, I had noticed that this front brake switch wasn't working correctly. It's stuck in the closed position, which means the brake light is always on. So my working theory now is that because the brake light is always activated and I don't have a battery installed to provide voltage at startup, there's just not enough electricity to power the brake light and fire the spark plug. So let's run a quick test. I'll disconnect the switch here in the headlight bucket, then reconnect the green and yellow wire back here and kick the engine over to check for spark. Bingo. And I'm calling that proof positive that the reason the spark plug wasn't...
Jacob!
Huh?
What are you doing out here?
Oh, just working on my scooter, honey. Why?
You said you'd fix the kitchen sink.
The kitchen sink, sweetie. What's the trouble?
Idiot! It's clogged because you poured old paint down the garbage disposal.
Sugar pie. That's because the TV said I shouldn't put it on the ground. And besides, I told you you can wash your dishes in the bathtub.
The tub? I want a kitchen sink. And what does our 3-year-old do with an axe?
Oh, don't worry about that. I told him to be careful.
You stupid, lazy,